Self-assessment. This is another practice to assess the speaking skills of our learners. And this is also a very popular practice nowadays. The children have to be trained in order to self-assess themselves. In the beginning, they might not take it very seriously and they might find it quite strange how to assess themselves. But it is a good practice in order to make the students realize that it is the best thing to judge yourself. You are the best judge of your work. This sort of a training would enable them to be learners who are not dependent on any other source to tell them what they need to do. They would know by themselves where they have to work on, which area they need to improve upon, and how to build up on their strengths. So it would be a good practice to introduce self-assessment in the classroom. Language teachers are encouraged to do the training of self-assessment in the classroom for their students and learners. Once they get into the habit of doing that, it is not even required that the practice should be continued in the class. The teacher may ask them later on that you can do your self-assessment and see where are the points which need to be considered relevant for improvement. So once they get into the practice, they can just do it even when the teacher is not asking them to do self-assessment, but they would be able to find out what they need to do to further enhance their speaking skills. Self-assessment has now become very common in also adult teaching classes. The adults are quite capable of assessing themselves. Sometimes they need to have an assurance from the teacher. So in that matter, when they assess themselves, they can meet the teachers in tutorials. Especially at higher learning institutions where the students are at a higher level, they can easily assess themselves and then they can have a meeting with the teacher. Instead of the teacher pointing out and bringing the critical points in their speaking skills, it is a good practice that the students bring out those points that they think that they lack in and they need to work on in order to improve upon these areas. So, because it is coming from themselves, they have a belief in it, they understand it, and there is no question to actually challenge the decision of the teacher because they have self-assessed themselves. They have faith in themselves that what they are thinking about their learning, that is quite right, and they are actually telling the teacher, this is the area where I really need to work upon. So it is like just the opposite of the traditional assessment that is being done by the teachers. But this can happen mostly in continuous assessment. When it comes to an exam which is being organized by a body which is external, so in that case, self-assessment would not be done. Of course, the agency would be assessing them. But for continuous assessments or for formative assessments, this is a good way and a good practice to make the learners understand how to self-assess themselves, how to reflect on other people's work, also to compare and reflect on their own work, make comparison, find out what needs to be done and how it needs to be done. Because that is coming from themselves, it would not be biased, they would trust themselves because they are known to themselves where they lack, which abilities they need to develop upon. So it is going to be a practice which is going to be very useful and it would save a lot of teachers' time also. The teachers would be helped by the students themselves to self-assess themselves, to reflect on their work, to peer assess their friends, and then maybe if they are mature enough and probably at a higher level, they do get that mature that they can discuss amongst themselves what do they think they need to work on. Even they can give an advice to their friends how to improve on the skill which is a bit not achieved by the student.